EU leaders say they're working on the urgent needs of Ukrainian defence amid a wide-scale rise in Russian military attacks across the country. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky joined leaders via video link as part of a two-day summit in Brussels, where he described the spectre of Russian cruise missiles killing Ukrainian civilians, including children. He called on the EU to step in immediately to support Ukraine, the way countries intervened to support Israel when it came under attack from Iran.
This is not a question of months, it's a question of days and weeks. It is very important that we deliver on our promises, and I can reassure you that all the stakeholders, all the actors, they are doing everything which is possible to speed up, to make more efforts. If it is possible, also to use more the stocks that are available, especially in the field of the air defense systems.
EU member states also agreed on the need for restraint and de-escalation in the Middle East and for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and humanitarian aid to reach starving people and for all hostages to be released.
We call on all the parties to exercise the utmost restraint. This is a very clear signal, and this is really our common position. This is a very clear signal that we want to send.
Brussels is aware of the threatening geopolitical situations in Ukraine and the Middle East. But today they'll be discussing something closer to home, how to revitalise the single market and protect European economies amid a future of foreseeable tensions. Shona Murray, Euronews, Brussels.
An attempt to stop the National Conservatism Conference in Brussels has drawn criticism and condemnation. On Tuesday, local mayor Emir Kia ordered police to shut it down to preserve public safety 3 hours after it had begun. Belgian Prime Minister Alexander De Croo described that decision as unacceptable. The order was later quashed by the Belgian Council of State. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, French politician Eric Zemmour and the UK's Nigel Farage were among those attending the far-right event. In a post on X, Farage said the shutdown order was made to silence free speech.
We rented a place in Budapest, and just several hours prior to the meeting, it was said that unfortunately it's not available anymore. And then we looked for another one, and they said that if the runner of the place would supply us with some beer and some food, he will be out of the business, you know. So the same kind of pressure technologies which you have experienced here was very common in the second part of the 80s in Hungary.
Some analysts say the move to suspend the conference could bolster support for the far right. The event draws together advocates of national sovereignty.
Of course, this action can be considered as something that can rather help the far right than destabilize them, because we of course know that the far right thrives on a victimization discourse. And they always try to say that the establishment wants to prevent them from saying what they think.
The incident has triggered fresh debate in Belgium about political tolerance. Emir Kia had said some people attending the conference held anti-gay and anti-abortion views. Prime Minister De Croo posted on X that banning political meetings is unconstitutional.
In Francophone Belgium, they go a bit further. There they also have what we call a cordon médiatique. So that also means that the representatives of the radical right, the extreme right, are not allowed to speak in the classical media. That is something that does not exist in the north of the country anymore.
The two-day event finished with a discussion on the future of conservatism in Europe and the challenges that lie ahead.
The European Union is considering extending sanctions against Iranian drones and missiles after Tehran launched a massive attack on Israel this weekend. The announcement followed an emergency meeting of EU foreign affairs ministers over the tense situation in the Middle East.
The region doesn't need a whole war embracing the whole region, and the world neither. And the people in Gaza neither, because if there is a regional escalation and the whole region is in war, then the war in Gaza will not stop. And the suffering of the people in Gaza will increase.
The EU already has restrictive measures against Iranian drones. The proposal is to extend these measures to Iranian missiles and ban regional allies from delivering Iranian drone attacks. However, more sanctions might not change anything.
Additional sanctions against Iran will likely have limited impact because since the Trump administration broke the Iran nuclear deal, the country has basically become a pariah. Then since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it tilted totally in the Russian camp. So it is already so isolated from the West that there is little more that the West can do in terms of sanctions vis-à-vis Iran.
EU member states are split on declaring the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization. EU foreign ministers will meet again on Monday to further discuss the extended sanctions.
Interest in the elections of the European Parliament is gradually rising, according to the latest edition of the Eurobarometer. This survey shows that 60% of EU citizens are either very interested or somewhat interested in the June elections. By contrast, 40% are not very interested or not at all interested. 71% of participants also say they are likely to cast a vote to elect their representatives in Brussels, a 10-point increase since 2019. The unpredictable state of global affairs appears to weigh heavily. 81% of citizens say the current international context makes voting even more important. Also on voters' mind is the cost of living crisis, the fight against poverty, public health, and the creation of new jobs are the top 3 priorities for Europeans. Another highlight from the Eurobarometer is the perception of the Parliament itself. 40% of citizens say they have a positive image of the hemicycle, which is the only EU institution directly elected. Meanwhile, 40% say their view is neutral and only 18% say it's negative. This marks the first time that the positive perception outweighs the neutral perception. The Eurobarometer will be the last to be released before the elections, scheduled to be held between June 6 and 9.
With European elections just weeks away, debate in France over the future of the European Green Deal is heating up. For more than 2 hours, 6 of the main candidates made their cases in the French city of Alger. The European Green Deal is a package of policy initiatives which aim to make the bloc climate neutral by 2050. It's a top issue for many voters.
Il faut protéger les océans, interdire l'exploitation des grands fonds marins, soutenir nos pêcheurs et lutter contre la pollution plastique dans les océans. C'est ce qu'on fera et ce qu'on portera.
The parties say they agree on fighting climate change, but some have concerns about the overall cost.
Ce que vous avez entendu dans ce débat, c'était que des gens qui disaient que la question environnementale leur importait beaucoup et que quelque part, il fallait continuer à avancer dans la politique de protection de l'environnement. Mais ne vous y trompez pas. Aujourd'hui, le pacte vert est menacé. Menacé parce que la plupart des groupes qui m'entourent portent atteinte à toute avancée possible en vue de la transition écologique et en vue de la justice sociale.
Missing from the debate, Rassemblement leader Jordan Bardella. He sent the party's vice president to stand in for him. Green MEP Marie Toussaint accused Bardella of avoiding debates on the subject.
Simplement, on ne fait pas une campagne électorale juste en faisant des rencontres entre experts. Moi, j'étais disponible et Jordan Bardella, il est sur le terrain, il assiste à d'autres rencontres. Il faut arrêter, si vous voulez, de confondre une campagne électorale. Je sais que les autres têtes de liste ne vont pas à la rencontre des électeurs, mais nous, c'est notre cas.
Many of the Green Deal's laws have already been adopted, including a ban on sales of internal combustion engine cars by 2035. However, member states are facing growing backlash, particularly from the agricultural sector. Farmers have been taking to the streets and blocking motorways and cities across Europe since January. The European Commission is working on proposals ahead of the elections to allay concerns and reduce the financial burden on the sector.
Supporters of a Swedish EU employee arrested in Iran 2 years ago have made a renewed appeal for his release. Sweden says 33-year-old Johan Flodorus, who worked for the External Action Service, was arbitrarily detained.
We are dedicated to Johan's case. We are working closely with the Swedish authorities. We condemn Johan's imprisonment and demand his immediate release. We condemn the conditions of his imprisonment, and we demand he is treated according to his right.
His family say he was arrested in April 2022 at Tehran airport while returning from a holiday with friends. But in December, the Iranian judiciary's news agency said Flodorus had been accused of spying for Israel and corruption on earth, a crime that carries the death penalty in Iran. His family denied those allegations, and Sweden's foreign minister slammed them as completely baseless and false. The United Arab Emirates has been lashed by heavy rain in what's been called a historic weather event. The amount of rain recorded surpasses anything documented since data collection started in 1949. Homes across the country were flooded and flights disrupted at Dubai International Airport, the world's busiest. Rain is unusual in the UAE, but does occur periodically during the cooler winter months. But many roads and other areas lack drainage given the lack of regular rainfall.